Dogs? Comic books? What do they have in common? Well, let's take a look in this episode of Raph's Retro Comics. Thank you for joining. And in this episode, I want to talk about a little bit about my journey in collecting comic books. Now, as I've been a collector now for decades, my collecting habits have shifted over time. A lot, and they're still shifting. Now, I don't buy as many new comic books anymore, and when I do, they're typically trade paperbacks or hardcovers. And what I buy now is typically comic books that I find interesting or for nostalgia reasons, and sometimes for other weird reasons. And this is where a comic book like this comes into play. So, Lassie. Now, for you younger people out there who may be watching, you probably don't know who Lassie is. Lassie was actually a very popular dog that was featured in TV series, books, and even in movies a long time ago. As a kid growing up, I remember actually watching Lassie on TV in black and white. So during COVID, we got a dog, like many other people. And I think what it did was it triggered something weird in my brain that all of a sudden, okay, when I look at comic books with dogs, maybe I'm interested in them now. But as well, like I'll show you a few others. For older comic books like this, I really like painted covers. There's something just really nice I find about painted covers. And I like old comic books, especially if they're in nice shape. And especially when they're not expensive. Like, I didn't pay a lot for these. So I had mentioned in one of my previous episodes the 5 C's of collecting comic books. You have characters, creators, covers, community, and content. These check off 2 of those C's. So yeah, I picked those up. Now, before, like during COVID, I thought it would be kind of interesting to chronicle the life of raising a dog and also creating content on YouTube. But what I found was, after a while, raising a dog is pretty repetitive, and there's not much interesting that happens beyond when the dog's a puppy, when there's a lot of stuff going on. It's kind of crazy. For the last episode, I thought I would combine my, knowledge of collecting comic books and my experience with dogs and maybe, put something together. And so what's coming up next is a clip of that, and I hope you'll enjoy it.
I read and collect comic books, more so older comic books. And how does this relate to dogs? Well, there's a specific comic book that I'm going to talk about that has a dog appear in it. The comic book I'm going to talk about is Star Spangled Stories, issue number 148, which features a character named Hans von Hammer, a World War I fighter pilot. It was published by DC in December 1969. Okay, so some more background information on the comic book, its characters, and the creators. There's a few things that are unusual about this comic book. The main character's name is Hans von Hammer, and he's a German World War I ace pilot, loosely based on Manfred von Richthofen, a famous fighter pilot from Germany. It was very unusual at that time for a comic book, especially an American comic book, to feature a character on the other side of the battle line. Enemy Ace was created by writer Robert Kanigher and artist Joe Kubert, 2 well-established talents at DC Comics. Both had been working on several of DC's war titles for a number of years, and this title was produced at the peak of their talents. Enemy Ace started as a feature in this series with number 138, and this is the 11th straight issue where he was the feature. In previous issues, he's depicted as a cold, battle-hardened loner, who is revered by his compatriots for his successes, but he often dismisses and deflects their praise, and is tormented by what he has done in this war. So how is this all related to dogs? Well, let's jump right into the story. In this issue, The main story has Hans von Hammer encounter a lost puppy that he almost runs over when he is landing his aircraft. The puppy gets injured, and he takes the puppy in as his companion and nurses it back to health. His compatriots stand in disbelief from these actions. Could this be the same Hammer of Hell who has ruthlessly killed dozens, who is showing such compassion? Von Hammer names the puppy Schatzi, which means darling in German. I mentioned earlier that the artist for this series is Joe Kubert, and I remember the first time when I saw his artwork, I didn't really care for it very much. I was used to more detailed, well-defined, cleaner artwork by other artists, not this rough, ragged work. But over time, I've learned to appreciate what a brilliant artist he is and how great he is at sequencing panels. He heavily researched the design of the planes from that era, and I appreciate even the minor details like the grime around the pilot's eyes generated from diesel fumes of the planes. Schatzi becomes Von Hammer's good luck charm, and he takes him along on one of his flights. He is successful in their mission, and his bond with Schatzi becomes stronger. He even introduces Schatzi to another recurring animal in Von Hammer's life, a lone wolf he meets up with regularly, to reflect on the challenges and struggles he is having in his life. On a further mission, he brings Schatzi, and this time Schatzi is able to do more than just be a lucky charm. The puppy warns Von Hammer that an enemy British plane is about to be in strike position, and Von Hammer is able to barrel roll just in time. But then tragedy strikes. Schatzi falls out of the plane. Von Hammer's immediate grief and anguish is palpable. He channels this grief in the next few panels in becoming what he is best known for, a killing machine in disguise. Like a madman, the Hammer of Hell tears into battle, wreaking a terrible havoc. 4, 5, 6 planes wrapped in flames fall victim to his murderous, withering fire. When one of his wingmen returns to the airfield, he trembles, wide-eyed, as he reports what he witnessed. He flew like an avenging angel of death, and after the battle he directed us back to the field, while he landed his plane amidst the dead below. It was horrible, like something out of Dante's Inferno. Perhaps he landed to confirm his kills. He is truly a killing machine. The mystique of Von Hammer is cemented again. So we cut to Von Hammer on the field, searching for his fallen puppy, remorseful for what happened, and acknowledging he will most likely share the same fate in the future. One of the things I've come to understand with our dog Dubu is the incredible bond that can develop over time. This story does a great job of illustrating this, and I am almost certain that the writer Robert Kanigher was a dog owner. Before being a dog owner, I truly underestimated the bond and affection pet owners had for their pets. Sure, they will drive you crazy at times, but the bond is there and develops stronger over time. I really don't know how I would take losing Dubu, even though we've only had him for a couple years. Yep, this is a sad story. And again, this is very atypical of a comic book from that time period. For several years, comic books posted a letters column where readers would submit their thoughts about previous issues. And I think this letter does a great job of summarizing what I felt. Dear Joe, for some time I found most written material unsurprising, although not uninteresting. Enemy Ace has always been interesting. But for the first time in ages, I was surprised by the story. The last thing I had expected to happen was for Schatzi to fall from Von Hammer's plane. I was so surprised that the story actually forced me to express emotion. The tragic outcome of the story made me want to cry. I think that you have continually tried to convey the madness and the sadness of war. If this is your goal, you have surely conveyed it to me. Thank you. Mitch Scheel, Lebanon, Oregon. Enemy Ace had a really good run, but after a while there's only so much you can write about a World War I pilot ace. That being said, I feel like these stories were some of the best DC had to offer during this time period. Comic series of DC's more recognizable characters from this time period like Batman and Superman, they can be fun to read, but are more dated and may not be as interesting. I do recommend searching the Enemy Ace issues that have been reprinted several times in many different forms. Comic books are a great story medium, and I totally love them and would encourage you to try some out because they're great to read.
So I really enjoyed putting that episode together, but as you may guess, it takes a lot of time. So I don't know how many of those I'll be doing in the future. But let me know if you liked it. Certainly let me know in the comments. That would be great. One thing I've learned about having a dog, and this I'm taking from a person I've met who has a dog, is you kind of learn what the meaning of unconditional love is. This is our first pet, and our dog is now over 3 years old, and it's been quite the journey, but we love our dog. Now, certainly there are more comic books with dog stories, and if I could recommend another one, it's this, Marvel Fanfare number 7, and it's not the main story featuring the Hulk, where he takes on the Blob and Eunice, but there's a backup story with Daredevil. Now, I'm going to warn you, it's also not a happy story, but it's one of my favorite Daredevil stories, and it does feature a dog, but it's really worth checking out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.